So, Wazir, right? I got to admit, I cannot say that, I didn't go there. I didn't start to watch it without any pre conception, sort of, it's one of these movies, which is supposed to promise, never-ending stuff that happens, and most Western such movies, at least, tend to be, sort of like, Bruce Willis or who's the other guy, Statham, Jason Statham. They all tend to be, very one-sided, one-dimensional, right? Very, they just want to do something, go some, and that's it. That's pretty much been yeah, not much of a narrative, just non-stop action. There's worse than them, to be fair. They got the Fallen series. Way worse, way worse. Yeah. Of course, it's just it's however ultimately. But yeah, interesting, very interesting indeed. I mean, I've never seen a movie so modeled after chess. They did try a bit too hard, but I don't think they overdid it with regards to the symbolism and everything. It was interesting, sort of. I mean, one of those things. So I mean, theoretically, he's supposed to have sacrificed his queen, so the pawn then supposedly becomes a queen. It's a bit much, but and then the ending is a bit over sentimental, but it's still the whole thing is interesting, shall we say? I mean, it's not straightforward. That makes it interesting for such a movie in such a genre. It's not superficial in this sense. I mean, it's what it is. Yeah, and the music is pretty interesting. Apparently, it was composed by loads of people, which I suppose, a variety makes it even more interesting. And it was, especially the beginning there. I mean, those voices, it seems to be some sort of choir. That is some awesome music, I got to say. It still was, ever so slightly, violent, as opposed to say this movie I just recently watched. I recently watched it, but it's quite old. Called Do You Like Me? It's sort of similar sort of movie, but it didn't quite invest too much into violence per se. This did have more violence, but it also has a story, So I guess in terms of how far narratives go, this was interesting for that reason. It still has violence, but at least it has story, as opposed to loads of, as opposed to, of course, shall we say again, the stupid Fallen series, which has 100% violence, no story, full stop, and somehow they're so totally commercially successful. I have no idea why, but there we go. But while that was contemplative and it relied a lot on music and editing, this doesn't so much, but it still tries to be symbolic. And I mean, with Bollywood movies, I suppose, unless they're totally all about almost musicals, pretty much, with dancing and music and songs. This just had songs, and but they still try to make them somewhat relevant to what it is. I still like the symbolism. Maybe it wasn't too heavy-handed. The fact that he didn't have legs and such. It's so yeah. Now I got to say, last time I watched a Bollywood movie, I think it was is it Tollywood? I think Telugu. I was quite bored. It was quite boring. It was quite long and didn't have much of a story. And strange stuff happened. I think I commented on it, so there's more there. Of course, one cannot really compare in this sense, but this was something else. See, despite being, I mean, a, an action movie essentially, but it wasn't. I mean, just mindless, brainless. Just I mean, there were guns, but it was also a narrative. So that's always good. This was also the first movie where I encountered this famous celebrity, Bachchan, right? I know he's been there for a long time. I read a bit about him. Apparently, he was a bit in politics as well. Um, but yeah, this I think is the very first movie. Usually before I don't actually watch much Bollywood, unfortunately. I've watched a few before. I've commented on a few. Last movie I watched that I liked was um one of Amir Khan's. He's the one I usually watch. I've watched about three of his, I think, at least. And what was it about stars something? Yeah, like stars and such. That was actually the first time when I heard of the Bachans as well. He mentioned them in terms of having AD, was it ADHD? I think I'm not sure, or I think it was dyslexia. Yeah. Of course, I don't think it's quite very relevant because acting, I'm not sure. But I suppose one needs to be able to read the script, yes, to act. I suppose it's relevant, I suppose. But then again, at that point, I looked them up and I thought, I think the one he mentioned specifically was the son of this guy. Maybe I think this guy is the original Bacha, possibly. I'm not sure. I know he was infected with COVID recently and recovered, but yeah, at that point, though, when I was watching Amir's movie, I thought, why is he mentioning it? Because mentioning this one specifically, I think it was his son, because since it's his son, I'm not sure, he must have accomplished everything just um all. I mean, he obviously got help from his family. As first impressions go, it's not bad at all. Um, apparently, he's been acting since he was young. So at one point, he was called the young whatever. So obviously, he's not young at all now. But yeah, he acted quite well here. He was quite amenable, quite devious, though, in terms of how the story evolved. But yeah, everything. It was quite interesting overall. He was certainly the most interesting persona. The other guy was a bit more simplistic, but it was still possible, I suppose. The story was a bit convoluted. At one point, I thought, yeah, this is going a bit over the top. They keep adding one after another, one twist after another. Maybe a bit too much, at one point. But in the end, I thought, this isn't. This is still not too bad. I mean, apparently it was, it doesn't seem to be an obscure movie, so yeah, I did like it personally. Um, so yeah, I don't know if this is the average Bollywood action movie, but if it was, great, I'll watch more. Or if it's like the average Bachchan movie, of course, all movies differ in the end, and actors don't really have much to do with them, and they're also directors or scriptwriters or whatever. So essentially, it was a sort of remarkable journey because I thought this was going to be just another ultra violent movie with not much of a plot. And it did turn out to be violent, quite violent, but I mean nothing in comparison to the Fallen series yet again. But despite the violence, as much violence as there was also a plot, and that's very interesting. This establishes then that it's not just pure dramas or comedies or sci-fi that do have plots. This this clearly indicates that even action-driven series can have plots, which really they should have. This should be the standard, not the exception. Somehow, considering the Fallen series are so commercially successful, of course, it won't be. Unfortunately, people seem to just want constant shootings, and that's pretty much it. That's it. Full stop. Yeah, you're successful. Go home. Yay. But anyway, as much as Wazir goes, yeah, this was very interesting indeed. Um, Yeah, I'll try. The directors, other movies possibly. This I did like.